Belgrade, January 1994. Mirjana stands at the bank counter holding a blue savings passbook, the kind with handwritten entries showing interest compounding annually. Her neighbor Dragan owns no bank accounts. He keeps 3 things in his apartment that will still buy groceries tomorrow. The teller types Mirjana's account number. She calculates with the latest conversion. She writes a number on the withdrawal slip: 68 dinars. Mirjana checks it twice. The passbook shows 680,000. The slip shows 68. The teller says the number is correct. 68 dinars buys 1/3 of a loaf of bread at the market across the street. Every deposit is documented. Every interest payment recorded. Every official stamp in place. The purchasing power is gone. Dragan used one of his 3 assets to buy groceries that morning. He traded access to the second for bread from the baker downstairs. The third held value that hadn't changed since October. What were they? And why did documentation, the thing Mirjana believed would protect her, become the mechanism of her loss? October 1993. Yugoslavia's monthly inflation reached 313 million%. Not annual, monthly. The dinar was redenominated 5 times in 313 days. Each time, the government removed zeros. Each time, the zeros reappeared within weeks. By January 1994, banks repriced deposits twice daily. Shops repriced hourly. A teacher's monthly salary of 50,000 dinars bought a used Yugo on October 1st. By January 6th, the same 50,000 dinars bought 1 egg at the Belgrade market. This was not chaos. This was a structural threshold. The dinar's velocity, the speed at which it circulated through the economy, exceeded the institutional capacity to redenominate it. Money changed value faster than banks could process transactions. State documentation systems could not keep pace with the information decay rate. At that threshold, all wealth denominated in state systems became structurally worthless. Bank deposits, bonds, pension accounts, salary contracts. The nominal figures on statements became meaningless. Not because the institutions collapsed, because the velocity exceeded their processing speed. Wealth didn't evaporate, it transferred. 3 asset types survived. Each operated through a distinct mechanism that required no state validation. The first mechanism, currency substitution through physical possession. German marks and Marlboro cigarettes operated as parallel money. Shop owners in Belgrade accepted marks at exchange rates they recalculated every few hours, sometimes every 30 minutes when velocity accelerated. No bank intermediary. Direct possession was documentation. Cigarettes functioned identically. A carton became a unit of account. Groceries cost 2 cartons. Rent cost 10 cartons. The carton's value remained stable because its supply was constrained, controlled by smuggling networks, not printing presses. These assets survived through velocity independence. When the dinar's transaction speed exceeded institutional processing capacity, marks and cigarettes maintained their own circulation systems. A greengrocer who accepted marks at 9 a.m. repriced them by 2 p.m. based on street rates. The currency operated faster than the state could track it. The second mechanism, production without exchange. A diesel generator in Novi Beograd produced 5 kilowatts regardless of monetary conditions. When the grid failed, 18 hours daily by December, the generator's output had direct use value. No exchange required. One neighbor traded bread for 2 hours of access. Output for output. The generator documentation didn't exist in state registries. No title deed, no serial number filed with municipal authorities. Dragan's ownership record was the generator itself, the knowledge of how to operate it, maintain it, repair it when the fuel injector clogged. When the grid failed 18 hours daily, neighbors arrived with offers. Bread for 2 hours of power. A bag of potatoes for an evening of light. One family brought cigarettes, 3 Marlboro cartons for a week of refrigerator access. No money changed hands. The generator's 5 kilowatt output had use value that needed no currency to mediate. The cigarettes functioned differently. They circulated. Shop owners recalculated their mark to dinar exchange rates every few hours, but cigarette prices held stable. Groceries cost 2 cartons, rent cost 10. A dentist appointment cost 1 carton per filling. The cartons moved through Belgrade as units of account: portable, durable, divisible, individual cigarettes for small purchases, full cartons for rent. The carton's value wasn't what it could buy in some future exchange. Its value was its acceptance right now, in the next transaction, with velocity that matched the collapsing dinar, but without requiring state infrastructure to process it. Dragan's generator survived through production independence. The cigarettes survived through transaction velocity. Different mechanisms, same outcome. Wealth transfer out of documentation systems the state controlled and into assets that functioned outside those systems entirely. By February, German marks had replaced dinars in 90% of Belgrade's transactions. The dinar existed only for utility bills. Even state companies quietly accepted marks. 2 mechanisms, 2 neighbors, 1 generator. Dragan's diesel generator sat in his garage on Kneza Milosa Street, 5 kilowatts, industrial grade. When Belgrade's grid failed for 18 hours daily, the generator's output had direct use value. His neighbor traded bread for 2 hours of generator access. Output for output. No monetary mediation. The generator survived through transformation, not exchange. It produced electricity regardless of currency conditions. The dinar's velocity was irrelevant. This is the second survival pathway. Productive assets that generate value through processes requiring no external validation. A Weimar farmer's thresher operated the same way. It converted wheat to flour. The Reichsmark's collapse did not stop the thresher from functioning. Infrastructure independence is the mechanism. When all exchange systems fail, production capacity remains. The generator's value was denominated in kilowatts per hour, a unit that could not be redenominated. By February, Dragan's garage had become a neighborhood utility. 12 households traded goods for generator access. The transaction log was verbal. No documentation, no state validation. The generator required no velocity to maintain value. It only required fuel and mechanical integrity. Mirjana kept the passbook in her kitchen drawer. The blue cover had faded from handling. Inside, 18 handwritten entries documented 6 years of deposits. The teller's stamps showed perfect institutional continuity from 1987 through September 1993. October 1st balance, 680,000 dinars. 3 months of groceries at current prices. She added nothing, withdrew nothing. Let the 18% annual interest compound exactly as the passbook terms specified. January 6th, she returned to the same bank. The same teller who had processed her September deposit now calculated the redenominated balance. 5 redenominations had occurred in the intervening 13 weeks. Each one removed zeros. Each one promised to stabilize the currency. The new balance, 68 dinars. The teller showed her the arithmetic. Every calculation was correct. Every redenomination had been applied according to official exchange rates. The passbook itself remained pristine. Every entry still visible, every stamp still valid. 1/3 of a loaf of bread. The documentation had survived perfectly. The wealth had not. Across Belgrade, this same transaction repeated in every bank branch. Pension accounts that had accumulated for 30 years. Bond certificates purchased in 1985. Salary contracts signed in 1990. All of them denominated in dinars. All of them redenominated 5 times in 313 days. All of them arrived at the same endpoint: documentation without value. The passbook told Mirjana what had happened to her wealth. It could not tell her where that wealth had gone. But the forensic record can. The mark rate changed every few hours. Shop owners kept radios behind the counter, tuned to Deutsche Welle for exchange updates. Morning rate, 47 dinars per mark. Afternoon, 112. By evening, 280. Belgrade grocers stopped using dinar prices by mid-November. Milk cost half a mark. Bread, 1/4 mark. Eggs, 2 marks per dozen. The price board showed dinar equivalents in chalk, erased and rewritten throughout the day. Most customers ignored the dinar column entirely. By February 1994, 90% of Belgrade transactions used marks directly. No conversion, no state exchange infrastructure. A customer handed over a 20-mark note. The grocer made change in marks. The transaction completed in seconds. No waiting for bank processing. No redenomination calculations. No institutional intermediary. The dinar survived in exactly one domain: utility bills, water, electricity, gas. State companies accepted only dinars for payment, but even that barrier dissolved. By late January, Belgrade Elektrodistribucija began accepting marks at the counter. Unofficially, no receipts documenting the currency used, just a stamp on the bill. Paid. The mark's velocity, the speed at which it circulated through the economy, operated independently of state capacity. No central bank needed to process mark transactions. No redenomination committee needed to remove zeros. The currency's institutional infrastructure existed outside Yugoslav territory. That independence made it immune to information decay. When transaction velocity exceeds institutional processing capacity, documented wealth transfers to undocumented carriers. The mark was the carrier. Yugoslavia was not exceptional. Weimar Germany, 1923. Shop owners accepted US dollars at exchange rates recalculated 3 times daily. Gold coins circulated as a parallel currency in Munich and Hamburg. The mechanism: currency substitutes that maintained velocity independent of Reichsbank processing capacity. Zimbabwe, November 2008. Monthly inflation reached 79,600,000,000%. The Zimbabwe dollar was redenominated 3 times in 12 months. In Harare markets, traders accepted US dollars, South African rand, and fuel vouchers. Diesel generators became rental assets. 1 hour of electricity, payment in foreign currency or barter goods. No Zimbabwean documentation required. Venezuela, 2018. The bolivar lost 95% of its value in 6 months. Caracas shops began pricing in US dollars, while the official exchange rate existed only on government websites. Cryptocurrency wallets, Bitcoin, Dash, operated as payment systems in 40% of retail transactions. The blockchain processed transfers when Venezuelan banks closed for system maintenance lasting weeks. Every hyperinflation since 1923 produces the same 3-category pattern. Currency substitutes. Assets that function as transaction media: foreign currency, cigarettes, fuel. Survival mechanism: portability. They circulate at velocity independent of collapsing state infrastructure. Productive assets: equipment that generates output without external validation. Generators, tools, livestock. Survival mechanism: transformation capacity. They produce value when all exchange systems fail. Decentralized documentation. Ledgers that exist beyond state control. Blockchain networks, distributed databases, physical bearer instruments. Survival mechanism: processing independence. Transactions clear without institutional validation. The categories are not theoretical. They are the exhaustive set of solutions to one structural problem. When documentation decay rate exceeds state processing capacity, which assets can retain and transfer value? 3 categories, 3 mechanisms, 3 forms of institutional independence. The pattern does not repeat because central banks fail to learn. It repeats because the constraint is mathematical. When velocity exceeds redenomination speed, documented wealth cannot survive inside state information systems. It must exit. These 3 pathways are where it goes. Modern financial systems process faster than Belgrade banks ever could. Digital ledgers update in milliseconds. Blockchain transactions clear in seconds. You can transfer wealth across borders from a phone screen while standing in a grocery store checkout line. The threshold hasn't changed. When transaction velocity exceeds institutional processing capacity, documentation collapses. The technology is irrelevant. The mathematics is identical. Lebanon, November 2019. Banks held $170 billion in deposits. Digital records, instant balance checks, real-time updates. Then velocity accelerated. Depositors began withdrawing dollars at rates the banking system couldn't sustain. On November 17th, banks closed, not temporarily, indefinitely. Your account balance still appears on the screen. The documentation persists. The number doesn't change, but withdrawal limits drop to $200 per month, then $100, then $50. A doctor who had $40,000 in documented savings could access $600 per year. The ledger shows the full amount. The system cannot process the claim. Turkey, December 2023. Lira deposits lost 79% of dollar value in 18 months. But dollar-denominated accounts at Turkish banks retained value. Same institution, same documentation systems, different denomination. One survived, one didn't. The processing capacity isn't the constraint. The information decay rate is the constraint. When a currency loses value faster than institutions can reprice claims denominated in that currency, documentation becomes a record of wealth that no longer exists. Digital systems accelerate the collapse. They don't prevent it. Faster processing means faster repricing, means faster recognition of losses. The terminal velocity arrives sooner. The exit window closes faster. Mirjana's passbook took 4 months to reach zero. A Turkish depositor's account reached the same endpoint in 18 months, but with perfect digital documentation updated in real time every step of the way. Go back to Mirjana, October 1, 1993. The blue passbook in her kitchen drawer held 680,000 dinars. January 6, 1994. The same passbook held 68 dinars. She followed every rule the institution gave her: 18% annual interest, government deposit insurance, official bank stamps on every page. The documentation was perfect. The protection was structural impossibility. Dragan kept a generator in his courtyard and 10 cartons of Marlboros in a metal cabinet. No passbook, no interest rate, no government guarantee. When the grid failed for 18 hours daily, the generator produced 5 kilowatts regardless of what the dinar was worth. When shops stopped accepting dinars entirely in December, the Marlboros bought groceries at rates recalculated every few hours. No documentation, no institutional validation, direct function. The collapse moved through the same mechanism in Weimar Germany, in Zimbabwe, in Venezuela. The velocity threshold, the redenomination lag, the transfer from documented claims to assets that operate outside state information systems. Mirjana's mistake was not trusting the wrong institution. Her mistake was believing any institution could process information faster than the currency collapsed. That is not a belief problem. That is a physics problem. And the solution is always the same 3 asset categories. Subscribe if you want the mechanism before the collapse. Every week, we dissect one wealth transfer from the historical record. No predictions, no panic, no financial advice, just the forensic breakdown of how systems fail and who survives them. Next week, the Weimar hyperinflation stabilization. Everyone knows about the wheelbarrows of worthless marks in 1923. Almost no one knows what happened in 1924 when the Rentenmark stabilized overnight. Gold holders assumed they had survived. They were wrong. The stabilization itself created a second transfer mechanism that stripped them clean. And the logic is structural, not accidental. The 1924 Currency Board imposed a transaction freeze that gold could not bypass. Physical possession solved the velocity problem. It did not solve the liquidity problem. Marks became stable. Gold became illiquid. The people who survived both collapses, 1923 and 1924, understood something about institutional reset mechanics that gold bugs still do not. We will show you the mechanism. Subscribe so you see it before it repeats. The historical record does not care whether you understand it, but your assets do.